Hi viewers, you are listening the Alpha King's Untold Stories, romantic audiobooks that will make your heart race, and you will enjoy it a lot. Don't forget to subscribe for more enchanting love tales. Hi viewers, you are listening the Alpha King's Untold Stories, romantic audiobooks that will make your heart race, and you will enjoy it a lot. Don't forget to subscribe for more enchanting love tales. Chapter 1. The Divine Decree. The moon goddess's law was absolute, sacred, eternal, unbreakable. True mace were a divine gift, a bond woven by celestial hands, meant to unite souls across any divide. That's what every pup was taught from the cradle. That's what the elders preached with solemn certainty. But here's the brutal truth they never whisper in those sacred halls. A decree from the heavens means nothing when it's crushed under the boot of an alpha's pride. My name is Selene Frost, and tonight, in the heart of the grand lunar arena, beneath the cold stare of 1,000 wolves, I learned that lesson in blood and fire. The air was thick with incense and arrogance. Marble pillars carved with the history of our kind towered around us, witnesses to my annihilation. The rejection ceremony was supposed to be private, a quiet, shameful little affair where I, the unwanted mate, would bow my head, whisper my acceptance, and slink into the shadows, a forgotten footnote in Alpha Kaelen Blackwood's glorious legacy. I felt the mate bond like a physical chain around my heart, a searing, brilliant, agonizing tether that pulsed with every beat. It screamed for him. It wept for his touch. Every instinct, every fiber of my being was a chorus begging me to submit, to kneel, to disappear. I looked up. My gaze locked with his from across the gleaming floor. Kaelen, Alpha of the mighty Blackwood Pack, son of legends, a mountain of power and cold perfection. His storm-gray eyes held no warmth, only a distant, icy disgust, as if I were something unpleasant he'd found on his boot. The bond between us flared, a surge of lightning that made his jaw clench. He felt it too. He just hated it. The high priest's voice boomed, echoing under the vaulted ceiling. Alpha Kaelen Blackwood, you stand before the moon's gaze. Do you formally reject the mate bond revealed by her grace? Kaelen didn't hesitate. His voice, deep and resonant, carried no ripple of doubt. I do. The moon goddess, in her wisdom, has made an error. This bond is unsuitable. I reject Selene Frost as my mate. A hushed, eager murmur swept through the crowd. Nobles in silks exchanged knowing glances. This was the entertainment they'd come for, the spectacle of an alpha correcting fate itself. All eyes swung to me, the pathetic, pale she-wolf from a nothing pack at the border of the territory. My wolf, a timid, gray shadow inside me, whimpered and tried to fold in on itself. But something else stirred. It wasn't courage, it was colder, sharper. It was the quiet, final snap of something that had been stretched too thin for too long. 22 years of being too small, too quiet, too ordinary. 22 years of whispers, daughter of rogues, bloodline diluted, a weak little thing. The humiliation of the last 3 days, seeing Kalen's contempt, hearing his courtiers' snickers, watching my own pack avoid my eyes in shame, it all crystallized into a single, diamond-hard point in my soul. The high priest cleared his throat, pity dripping from his words. Selene Frost, do you accept Alpha Blackwood's rejection and release him from the bond? The silence was a physical weight. I could feel Kalen's expectation, my soft, broken yes. I could see the king on his distant throne, watching with ancient, bored eyes. I could even see Alara, who raised me, hiding at the back, her face streaked with silent tears. I took a breath that felt like my first. My voice did not tremble, it did not whisper, it rang out, clear as shattering ice, cutting through the stifling air. I, Selene Frost, accept your rejection, Alpha Kaelen Blackwood. A collective, satisfied sigh rustled through the arena. There it was, done. They could all go home now. I took a single step forward, the sound of my boot on stone echoing in the sudden quiet. But, I continued, and that single word hooked the entire room. But I reject you in return. The gasps were sharp, like a flock of startled birds taking flight. Someone dropped a goblet. The clatter was deafening. Kaelen's perfect composure cracked. His eyes widened, then narrowed into dangerous slits. What did you say? I turned to face the crowd, my heart hammering a wild, furious rhythm against my ribs. The moon goddess's laws are clear. The bond is acknowledged by two souls. It can be dissolved by either. You have dissolved it from your end. Now I dissolve it from mine. I reject you, Alpha. I cast your rejection back at your feet. Chaos erupted. The high priest sputtered, scrambling for his ancient tome. The nobles were on their feet, shouting, pointing. King Aldrich, his boredom vanished, leaned forward, a spark of intense interest in his old eyes. Kaelen, that manual on the throne, the power of an ancient lineage, they looked at my little figure, not with disgust, but with something morose, something calculating. The high priest finally found his page, his finger tracing the text. Your Majesty, she is technically correct. Article 7 of the Luna Lex, the reciprocal dissolution clause. It exists. King Aldrich's lips curved into a slow, unsettling smile. Does it now? How fascinating. He looked at Kaelen. Then the law is clear, Alpha Blackwood. The bond is mutually severed, and according to that same ancient article, the party who initiated the sequence owes compensation to the other. Kaelen's face went pale. Compensation? What nonsense is this? The high priest's voice trembled with awe and dread. Equivalent status compensation for severing a divine bond. The rejected party may claim territory and rank equal to what the bond would have granted. The meaning slammed into the room, then into me. The world tilted.
King Aldrich nodded, his smile widening. Indeed, Selene Frost, by the power of the law you have invoked, you are no longer a rejected mate. He paused, letting the anticipation coil to its breaking point. You are an alpha, entitled to your own lands. Choose your territory. The roar of the crowd was a tidal wave. I stood in the eye of the hurricane, my fate rewritten in a single, impossible moment, from shame to sovereignty in 60 seconds. But as I looked at Kaelen, I saw no defeat. I saw a promise, dark and deadly in his eyes. This was not over. He had been humiliated before the entire kingdom, and a wolf like Kaelen Blackwood did not suffer humiliation. He would make me pay for this. The game had just begun, and I had no idea how to play. Now, Chapter 2 detailed. Chapter 2, the weight of a crown you never wanted. Shock is a cold, hollow bell ringing inside your skull. The king's words, "You are an alpha," hung in the air, beautiful and terrifying, like a glittering sword placed in the hands of a child. For 3 heartbeats, the throne room was a painting of frozen chaos, mouths agape, eyes bulging, 100 nobles transformed into statues of pure astonishment. Then the noise crashed back in, a cacophony of outrage, disbelief, and a few scattered, hopeful cheers from the back, from the servants, the guards, the invisible wolves who filled the space between the marble and the majesty. Through the din, Kaelen's voice was a whip-crack of controlled fury. "Your Majesty, this is an absurdity. You cannot grant alpha status to a rogue with no pack, no strength, no lineage." The king's ancient eyes, which had seen empires rise and crumble, held a glint of merciless amusement. The law does not ask for lineage, Alpha Blackwood. It asks for justice. She invoked a right. You triggered its consequence. The mechanism is older than my reign, older than this castle. I do not grant it. I merely acknowledge its function. He turned his gaze back to me, and the weight of it was immense. Selene Frost, the law states you may claim territory equivalent to what the mate bond would have provided. As Kaelen's mate, you would have been Luna of the Blackwood Pack, co-ruler of the northern timberlands. A slow, deliberate pause. Do you wish to claim half of Kaelen's domain? Half of his kingdom? The sheer audacity of it stole my breath. I could see the vision, Kaelen's fury, his warriors' rebellion, a civil war sparked by my mere existence. It was a path drenched in blood, and it would be mine. But before I could open my mouth, another voice cut through, thin and strained with tears. She cannot claim anything. Ilara, my adoptive mother, she pushed her way forward from the crowd, her face ashen, her hands trembling. She would not meet my eyes. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice breaking, "forgive my interruption, but Selene, she has no standing to invoke any law." She drew a crumpled parchment from her cloak. Its seal was a familiar, brutal slash of wax, the sigil of the Frostfang Pack. My pack. 3 hours ago, before this ceremony, I, as acting alpha of the Frostfang Pack, I formally expelled Selene for chronic disobedience and conduct unbecoming of a pack member. She is packless, a rogue. By our own laws, a rogue has no legal standing before the throne. The silence this time was absolute, deafening. The cold that had been ringing in my head plunged straight into my heart and froze it solid. I stared at Ilara, the woman who found me, a scrawny, terrified 5-year-old lost in a blizzard, who warmed me by her fire, fed me, sang me the old lullabies, who told me I was safe, who called me daughter. Her face was a mask of agony, but her hand, holding that damning parchment, was steady. Kaelen's smile returned, slow and venomous. He reached out and took the document from her limp fingers. "Thank you, Alpha Ilara." He unfolded it with a theatrical flourish and presented it to the high priest. "As you can see, filed and witnessed before the sun reached its zenith today, Selene Frost came into this throne room not as a member of the Frostfang Pack, but as a lone wolf, a nobody. And nobodies, turning his triumphant glacial eyes on me, cannot claim reciprocal rights. The original rejection stands, unanswered, uncompensated." The high priest scanned the parchment, his shoulders slumping. He looked at the king and gave a tiny, defeated nod. The ground beneath my feet turned to mist. The crown I had held for mere seconds dissolved into ash. The betrayal was so complete, so meticulously orchestrated, it felt less like a stab in the back and more like the sky itself had fallen on me. "Ilara," my voice was a ghost of a sound. "Why?" Her tears fell in earnest now, but they felt like lies. "He promised, Selene. He promised to protect the pack, to secure our borders, to give us food through the winter. Our children were hungry. Our warriors are weak. What was I to do? Trade one life for the survival of 40? Her words were a rational leader's calculus, and they broke what was left of my heart. "So you sold me for a promise from the wolf who just humiliated me? You were never truly one of us," she burst out, the truth she'd hidden for 17 years, finally clawing its way free. "Your blood was always strange, weak. We took you in out of pity. This way your life means something. Your sacrifice saves us all." Sacrifice, the word echoed. I was not a person. I was a transaction, a piece to be traded on the political board. The king sighed, a genuine disappointment. The law is cruel, but it is clear. Without Pack standing at the moment of the reciprocal rejection, the claim is void. The dissolution is null. Alpha Blackwood's initial rejection is all that remains. He looked at me, and for a fleeting second, I saw something like regret. You played a masterful move, child, but you were checkmated before you even stepped onto the board. The defeat was a physical sickness. The brief, glorious flame of defiance was snuffed out, leaving me cold and empty in the dark. I had been outmaneuvered by the two people who should have protected me. I was utterly, completely alone. I bowed my head, not in submission, but in sheer exhaustion. Then it is settled. I congratulate you on your victory, Alpha Blackwood. I hope the safety of the Frostfang pack was worth the price of your honor. I turned to leave, to walk out of this gilded cage and into whatever oblivion awaited a rogue wolf. Perhaps the wilds would be kinder than my own kind. Wait, the king's voice stopped me. It was not the voice of a judge delivering a verdict. It was the voice of a storyteller who had just discovered a fascinating new twist.
While the reciprocal rejection may be nullified, there is another law, an older one, a more final one. He stroked his beard, his eyes alight with a predatory curiosity. The right of blood challenge. When a wolf has been grievously wronged by an alpha and all other avenues are exhausted, they may stake their life for a chance at justice, single combat, to the death, or submission. Kaelen scoffed. Do not waste our time, Your Majesty. Look at her. She is a mouse challenging a dire wolf. It would be a slaughter, not a challenge. Precisely, the king murmured, his gaze fixed on me. But it is her right to choose that slaughter. The challenged alpha must accept, or forfeit his title and lands immediately. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to an intimate, dangerous whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the room. So, Selene Frost, orphan, rogue, betrayed and cast out, you have one final card to play. Will you walk away into the shadows and live with the knowledge that they broke you? Or will you issue a blood challenge? Will you give them the fight they think you cannot win, and perhaps, in doing so, win something far greater? The throne room vanished. All I saw was Kaelen's smug triumph, Alara's shattered guilt, the eager, bloodthirsty faces of the nobles. My life was already over. My future was ashes. What did I have left to lose? My fear evaporated, burned away by a new, clean, and terrifying fire. Purpose. I turned on my heel, my ragged cloak swirling. I looked directly at Kaelen Blackwood, Alpha of the Northern Timberlands, my destined mate, my destroyer. My voice, when it came, was quiet, but in the utter silence, it was the only sound in the world. I, Selene Frost, a rogue wolf with nothing but my life to wager, invoke the right of blood challenge against you, Alpha Kaelen Blackwood. I let the gasp of the crowd wash over me, my eyes never leaving his. I challenge you for your title, your lands, and your honor. Or I will die trying. The hook was set. The game had not ended, it had just become a duel, and in 7 days, one of us would die. Now Chapter 3 detailed. Chapter 3, A Cage of Gilded Stone. Silence after my challenge was not a lack of sound. It was a held breath, a coiled spring, a predator tensing before the pounce. It stretched, thin and sharp, until I thought the very stained glass windows might shatter from the pressure. Then Kaelen laughed. It wasn't a roar of amusement. It was a low, cold, disbelieving chuckle that dripped with condescension. You really are determined to be a spectacle until the very end, aren't you? He shook his head, as if marveling at a stubborn, foolish child.
A blood challenge from you? It's not bravery, Selene. It's suicide with an audience. King Aldrich, however, was not laughing. His ancient eyes gleamed like polished river stones. The challenge is valid, and under the blood right, you cannot refuse it, Alpha Blackwood. You must either accept combat or forfeit everything to her immediately. What is your answer? Kaelen's mirth vanished, replaced by a mask of icy contempt. He swept his gaze over the assembled nobles, his court, his kingdom. To forfeit was unthinkable. It would brand him a coward for eternity. To fight was a tedious formality, a nuisance. Very well, he said, his voice a bored decree. I accept the challenge of the little rogue, but I choose the terms. His eyes, like chips of winter granite, locked on mine. 7 days from now, at the midnight hour, under the full moon's peak, we fight in the arena of echoes, in our wolf forms, no weapons, no interference, and we fight, he paused, letting the finality of it hang in the air, to the death, no submission, only one wolf leaves that circle alive. A fresh wave of gasps rolled through the room. Death matches were rare, reserved for traitors and oathbreakers. He wasn't just planning to win, he was planning to erase me. My stomach turned to liquid ice, but I kept my spine straight. Agreed. Then it is settled, King Aldrich proclaimed, clapping his hands once. The sharp sound echoed like a davil. Let the record show Selene Frost has invoked the right of blood challenge against Alpha Kaelen Blackwood. Combat is set for 7 nights hence in the Arena of Echoes. Until that time, both challengers are under the Crown's protection. Any harm, any interference will be treated as treason against the throne itself. He gave a slow, deliberate look around the room, his gaze lingering on Kaelen's allies. Court is dismissed. The spell broke. The crowd erupted into a frenzy of excited chatter, already placing bets, dissecting my doomed fate as they streamed toward the towering doors. I was a curiosity again, a dead wolf walking. I stood alone in the emptying vastness, the marble floor cold beneath my boots. I didn't look at Alara as she was ushered away by her pack, her shoulders shaking. I didn't look at Kaelen as he held court with a cluster of fawning nobles, already celebrating his impending victory. A figure approached me, not a noble, but a warrior. A man in the polished armor of the royal guard, his face etched with the scars of 100 battles, his hair steely gray. He moved with a quiet, efficient grace. Kaelen, he said, his voice gravelly but not in kind. Miss Frost, I am Commander Thorn. By order of the king, you are to be housed in the Tower of Ascension until the challenge. You will have access to training grounds and the royal archives. Come with me. He didn't ask, he simply turned, expecting obedience. What choice did I have? I followed him, my footsteps echoing in the now quiet hall. We left the throne room through a small, discreet door hidden behind a tapestry, entering a labyrinth of colder, plainer stone, the veins of the castle, away from its gilded skin. The Tower of Ascension was a misnomer. It was a prison for noble enemies, a cylindrical stone needle rising from the castle's eastern flank. My chamber was at the very top, a circular room with a single narrow window overlooking a mist-frauded chasm. There was a bed, a desk, a wash basin, and a haunting, absolute quiet. The door was thick oak, reinforced with iron. Commander Thorn stood in the doorway, his expression inscrutable. Food will be brought. A guard will be posted outside for your protection, as decreed. Do you require anything specific for your preparation? The word sounded so absurd I almost laughed. Preparation for a death sentence? I was going to be fed and sheltered like a lamb before the slaughter. But then I looked at Thorn. His eyes weren't mocking, they were assessing. He had seen wolves enter this tower before. He had seen them leave for their final battles. He was a soldier. He understood the mechanics of a fight, even a hopeless one. "I need to know how to kill him," I said, the words stark and brutal in the quiet room.
Thorn's eyebrow twitched, almost imperceptibly. Alpha Blackwood has trained since he could walk. He has the strength of 10 wolves, speed that blurs, tactics honed in real border wars. You have 7 days. "I know the numbers," I said, a spark of that new, cold fire igniting in my chest. I didn't ask for a prophecy of my demise. I asked for a weapon, any weapon. A weakness, a habit, something he favors in combat, something he neglects. A long silence stretched between us. Then Commander Thorn did something remarkable. He gave the faintest, briefest nod. He relies on his overwhelming strength. He favors a direct, crushing assault to end fights quickly, to break limbs first, confidence second. He is less practiced in prolonged defensive combat. He expects fear. He uses it. It wasn't much, but it was a thread, a single thin thread in the abyss. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me," he said, his voice dropping lower. "The king's protection is law, but it is not a shield. Eyes are everywhere. Wolves have ears in these walls. Your greatest enemy in these 7 days may not be Alpha Blackwood, but the silence in this tower and the whispers outside it." With that ominous warning, he stepped back. The heavy door swung shut with a sound like a tomb ceiling. The lock turned with a final echoing clunk. Alone, the reality descended, heavy and smothering. 7 days, 168 hours, and then an end. I walked to the narrow window, pressing my forehead against the cold stone. Far below, the lights of the royal city twinkled like fallen stars. Somewhere out there, Kaelen was plotting my end. Somewhere out there, Alara was justifying my sacrifice. And here I was, in a stone cage, expected to await my execution with grace. A strange calm began to seep through the panic. It was the calm of the condemned, the calm of having no options and therefore nothing left to fear. I would not spend these days weeping. I would not spend them begging the moon goddess for a miracle. If I was to die in 7 days, I would spend every single moment learning how to make Kaelen Blackwood bleed first. I turned from the window. On the desk, I saw a stack of blank parchment and a quill. A cruel joke or a tiny mercy? I sat, dipped the quill, and began to write. Not a letter, not a confession, a list. 1. Endurance. He expects a quick fight. I must last longer than he anticipates. 2. Defense. Learn to evade, to block, to turn his strength against him. 3. The element of surprise. He expects a frightened rabbit. I must become something else. My writing grew more frantic, the quill scratching against the parchment. 4. Discover his true weakness. It is not physical. Thorn said he uses fear. What if he faces someone who is not afraid? 5. My hand stilled. What was the 5th thing? What could possibly prepare me for this? A soft, almost imperceptible scraping sound came from the other side of the door. Not the guard shifting his feet, something else, like a piece of parchment being slid underneath. I froze, my breath catching. After a moment of silence, I stood and crept to the door. There, on the flagstones, was a single, folded square of paper. No seal, no name. Heart hammering, I snatched it up and retreated to the dim light by the window. I unfolded it. The handwriting was elegant, yet hurried. The Tower of Ascension is not the only place of learning in this castle. Beneath the royal archives, there is a door forgotten by time. It opens for those with nothing left to lose. Seek the 3rd history of the War of Howling Shadows. Pull it forward, not out. You have 6 nights before the 7th. Do not waste them waiting to die. It was not signed.
I stared at the words until they blurred. A trick? A trap laid by Kaelen's allies to catch me breaking the king's decree? Or a lifeline? The note dissolved into silver ash in my hand, leaving no evidence behind. Magic. Old magic. A shiver that had nothing to do with the cold traced my spine. Commander Thorne's warning echoed. Wolves have ears in these walls. But someone else had eyes, and they were offering me a path out of the silence. The hook was no longer just the duel, it was the mystery in the shadows of the castle. Who was helping me, and what forgotten door lay waiting beneath the archives? My 7 days of waiting had just become a race against a different kind of clock. I had to survive the tower, find the door, and uncover whatever secret it held, before Kaelen or his spies discovered I was no longer just a passive prisoner awaiting my fate. The game had layers, and I had just been handed a map to the first one.
I held my breath, pressing my ear to the cold wood. A voice, so low it was barely a breath of sound, seeped the gap. It was ancient, dry, like pages turning in a tomb. The third history of the War of Howling Shadows does not sit on the shelf. It leans against the memory of the first king. Find the statue with eyes of lapis lazuli. His gaze points the way when the moon passes the third arrow slit. Then silence. "Who are you?" I whispered back, my lips almost touching the grain of the door. No answer. Only the retreating whisper of soft-soled footsteps on stone, fading into nothing. My mysterious benefactor was not just a note-passer. They were here, in the castle, moving with ghost-like silence, guiding me. The message was another piece of the puzzle, more specific than the note. A statue, lapis lazuli eyes, the moon's path. It was a clue to finding the hidden door, but it also meant my movements were being watched, my progress monitored. A thrill of fear, sharp and clean, cut through my despair. I was not as alone as I thought, but that also meant I was not as hidden as I hoped. The day bled away, measured by the slow crawl of sunlight across the floor. I practiced my stances until my legs shook. I practiced falling and rolling, trying to make my body remember how to move without breaking. It was crude, amateurish, but it was action. It kept the paralyzing terror at bay. When the second meal came at dusk, it was a different guard, older, with a bored, weary expression. As he set the tray down, his eyes flicked to me, then away. But his hand lingered for a second on the tray, his finger tapping twice, very deliberately, next to the wooden cup. My heart stuttered. Another signal? Once he was gone, I examined the tray. Nothing seemed unusual. Bread, stew, water. I picked up the wooden cup. It was ordinary, but as I tilted it, I saw it. A tiny, almost invisible symbol had been scratched into the bottom, a crescent moon cradling a single star. The sigil was not one I recognized from any of the great packs. A sign of allegiance, a silent declaration from someone within the castle itself. The conspiracy of my survival was growing. Commander Thorne with his tactical hint, the note-passer, the whisperer at the door, the guard with the marked cup. How many were there, and why were they risking the king's wrath and Kaelen's vengeance for a rogue like me? Night fell, deep and absolute. The tower was a well of darkness, the only light a sliver of moonbeam through my window. According to the whisper, I had to wait for the moon to pass the third arrow slit. I watched, my nerves stretched wire-tight, as the silver light slowly traversed the room. There were 5 narrow arrow slits in the curved wall. I counted.
When the bright edge of the moonbeam kissed the inside edge of the third slit, I moved to the window and looked out, following the imaginary line of the light. It stretched across the chasm, a silver bridge in the night, and landed squarely on the lower roof of a vast blocky structure attached to the main castle, the royal archives. My path illuminated by the moon itself. A coincidence or design? The architecture of the castle, the placement of the arrow slits, had it been arranged centuries ago to guide someone someday to that secret door? This was no simple hidden room. This was a secret kept in stone and moonlight. The realization was a lightning strike. My challenge against Kaelen was the spark that had lit the fuse, but there was a much older game being played in the shadows of this kingdom, a game of hidden doors, forgotten wars, and moonlit signs. And somehow, against all reason, I had become a player. I had 6 nights left, 6 nights to train my helpless body, and 6 nights to unravel this ancient mystery, to find that door and discover what it guarded. Was it a weapon? Knowledge? A power that could tip the scales in a hopeless fight? Or was it simply a deeper, darker trap? The hook was no longer suspense about the duel's outcome. It was the terrifying, exhilarating question: what hidden truth slumbered beneath the king's own archives, and why was a network of silent allies guiding a doomed rogue toward it? Tomorrow, I would have to get out of this tower. Chapter 5. The Third History. Daylight in the tower was a taunt, a brilliant, useless thing that illuminated my prison but offered no escape. I spent the third day in a frenzy of restless preparation, my mind spinning between combat drills and the cryptic moonlit clue, the statue with eyes of lapis lazuli. When the evening guard, a stern-faced woman with a burn scar tracing her jaw, brought my meal, I dared a question. The Royal Archives, are they open to visitors? She didn't look at me, setting the tray down with a sharp clatter. Archives are closed at dusk by the king's order. Her voice was flat. Then, as she turned to leave, she added almost too quietly to hear, "The head archivist, Master Silas, takes his evening walk along the west gallery at the 8th bell. He is forgetful. Often leaves his keys." The door shut. My pulse quickened. Another thread, another silent conspirator. The network within the castle was not just guiding me, it was actively clearing a path. The 8th bell tolled through the castle stones, a deep, mournful sound. I had used a loose thread from my blanket to mark the slow progress of shadows on the wall, counting the hours. Now it was time. I had no plan, only a desperate need to move. I pressed my ear to the door. The guard outside, the bored older man from yesterday, was humming a low, tuneless melody. I took a deep breath and knocked softly. The humming stopped. A slot at eye level slid open. "What?" I feel ill," I said, letting my voice tremble. "Dizzy. The room is spinning. Could I possibly have a breath of air in the hallway? Just for a moment?" A long pause. I could almost hear his internal debate, duty versus compassion for the condemned. With a grunt, the slot closed, the lock turned, and the door swung inward. He stood there, blocking most of the doorway, his expression unreadable. 1 minute. No tricks. I stepped out, feigning weakness, one hand on the cold wall. The hallway was a tight, torch-lit spiral descending into gloom. The air was cooler, smelling of damp stone and smoke. Freedom, however tiny, was intoxicating. "The West Gallery?" I whispered, the words barely forming on my lips. The guard's eyes flickered. He gave an almost inconceivable nod towards the downward staircase. "Your minute is half gone." That was my signal. I moved, not with a prisoner's shuffle, but with the swift, silent tread my years in the quiet Frostfang wilds had taught me. I flew down the spiral stairs, my soft boots making no sound. I heard a faint, deliberate cough from above, the guard covering my retreat. The castle was a living creature at night, its stone veins humming with distant activity. I followed memorized directions gleaned from childhood tales of the royal seat, slipping through servants' passages and across deserted courtyards, a shadow among shadows. The west gallery was a long, cloistered walkway open to a central garden lined with statues of past kings and heroes. And there he was, an elderly man with a wispy halo of white hair, leaning on a cane, peering myopically at a plaque beneath a statue of a warrior king. Master Silas, the head archivist. A ring of large iron keys hung from his belt. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had to get those keys without raising an alarm. I had no charm, no guile, only desperation. I stepped into the torchlight of the gallery, affecting the same weak, unsteady posture I'd used in the tower. "Master Archivist? Please, sir, can you help me? I'm lost. I was attending the court and I've become separated from my party." He turned, blinking owlishly. "Lost? At this hour? The galleries are closed, child. You shouldn't be here." His voice was reedy, kind but confused. "I know, sir. I'm so sorry," I said, taking a step closer, my eyes on the keys. "It's just so vast. If you can just point me toward the main hall." As I spoke, I pretended to stumble, lurching toward him. He instinctively reached out to steady me, his cane clattering to the flagstones. In that moment of contact, my fingers brushed the keyring, but it was fastened securely to his belt by a leather thong. Oh dear," he fretted, bending with a creak of joints to retrieve his cane. His movement pulled the keys forward, and the thong stretched. I saw my chance. "Let me help you, sir." I bent quickly, as if to grab his cane, but my other hand darted to his belt. With a swift, sharp tug, the worn leather thong snapped. The heavy keyring fell into my waiting palm, and I concealed it instantly in the folds of my tunic. "There you are, sir." I handed him his cane, my voice steady despite the theft screaming in my veins. "Thank you, child, thank you," he mumbled, straightening up. He patted his belt absently, a faint frown crossing his face. "Now, the main hall?" "Yes, through that archway, down the long corridor, third left. You really must be more careful." I thanked him profusely and hurried in the direction he pointed, not toward the main hall, but toward the looming, dark shape of the archives building. I glanced back once. Master Silas was still standing there, peering at his belt, his old face puzzled. He patted it again, shrugged, and continued his slow walk, muttering to himself. Guilt pinched me, but I smothered it. This was survival. The archives door was massive, oak banded with black iron. My stolen keys felt like ice in my hand. The fourth key I tried turned with a smooth, well-oiled clunk. The door swung open into profound darkness and the dense, sweet-sour smell of old parchment and dust. I slipped inside and closed the door behind me, plunging myself into absolute black. I waited for my eyes to adjust, listening. Only the whisper of my own breath. I felt along the wall until my fingers found a cold metal sconce holding a stub of a candle and a tinderbox. A few fumbling strikes later, a tiny flame sprang to life, pushing back the darkness to reveal a cavernous hall. Ceilings vanished into gloom. Endless shelves, crammed with scrolls and books, forming towering canyons of knowledge. Find the statue with eyes of lapis lazuli. I held the candle aloft, its light throwing monstrous, dancing shadows. I moved deeper, past histories of treaties, bestiaries of mythical creatures, genealogies of extinct packs. The air grew colder, the silence heavier. And then I saw it, in a shadowed alcove at the very rear of the main hall, standing on a pedestal of black marble. Not a king or a warrior, but a life-sized statue of a hooded figure, a scholar or a monk holding an open book. Its face was in shadow, but as I raised my candle, the flame caught 2 points of brilliant deep blue, lapis lazuli. They seemed to glow with an inner light. The whisper's words echoed. His gaze points the way. I stepped closer, aligning myself with the statue's sightline. It was not looking at any shelf or door. It was staring directly at a vast, intricate tapestry that covered the entire far wall, a woven depiction of the War of Howling Shadows, a legendary conflict from the dawn of our kind. Wolves clashed under a bleeding moon, forests burned, ancient alphas fell. The third history does not sit on the shelf, it leans against the memory of the first king. I walked to the tapestry, my candle guttering in the draught that seemed to emanate from behind it. I examined the woven scene. There in the center was the first king of unified wolfkind, Aldrich the founder, standing triumphantly. The memory of the first king. My fingers traced the thick, dusty fabric. At the edge of the woven king's cloak, near the floor, the tapestry was not flush with the wall. There was a slight gap. Heart in my throat, I pulled the heavy fabric aside. Behind it was not wall, but a recess, and in that recess, leaning against the stone, was a single, enormous, leather-bound tome. It was easily 3 times the size of any other book in the archives, its cover worn smooth with age, embossed with a faded symbol, a crescent moon over a mountain range. The third history of the War of Howling Shadows. This was it, the key, not a book on a shelf, but a secret placed behind a secret. I set my candle down and gripped the massive book with both hands. It was incredibly heavy. Remembering the note's instruction, pull it forward, not out, I didn't try to lift it. Instead, I braced my feet and pulled the top of the tome toward me. For a terrifying second, nothing happened. Then, with a deep, grinding rumble that vibrated through the floor, the entire section of stone wall behind the recess began to move. The book was not a book to be read, it was a lever disguised as a book. The wall slid sideways, revealing a yawning black opening. A rush of stale, ancient air, cold as a grave, washed over me, extinguishing my candle. I stood in absolute darkness before a door forgotten by time. The path was open, the mystery awaited. But as I stared into the impenetrable black, a new, more immediate fear gripped me. The grinding sound had been loud, too loud. In the sleeping silence of the archives, it would have been a thunderclap. Somewhere in the darkness behind me, I heard a new sound, the soft, deliberate click of a door opening. Not my secret door, the main archives door. And then a voice, smooth as oiled steel, slithered through the blackness. "Well, well, the little rogue is full of surprises. I thought you'd be weeping in your tower, not treasure hunting." And then a voice, smooth as oiled steel, slithered through the blackness. "Well, well, the little rogue is full of surprises. I thought you'd be weeping in your tower, not treasure hunting." I knew that voice. It wasn't Kaelen, it was Torin, his beta, Kaelen's most loyal and vicious hound. The hook plunged deeper, from mystery to immediate peril. I was at the threshold of ancient secret, unarmed, in the dark, with a deadly enemy at my back. The door to the past was open before me. The door to my present death had just closed behind me. Chapter 6. The Taste of Stone and Blood. The darkness in the archives was no longer just an absence of light, it was a living thing, thick with the scent of old secrets and new menace. Torin's voice seemed to come from everywhere, echoing off the endless shelves. "You really shouldn't play with things you don't understand, little rabbit," he purred, his footsteps a soft, predatory whisper on the stone floor. "The master is going to be so interested." My mind screamed at me to run, but which way? Into the unknown black maw of the secret passage, or try to vanish back into the maze of shelves? My body chose before my mind could. I snatched the still-smoking candle stub and the tinderbox from the floor and dove through the open secret doorway, into the suffocating dark. I didn't look back. I just ran, one hand skimming the cold, slimy wall to my right, the other fumbling to strike the tinderbox as I moved. Sparks flew, uselessly. Behind me, Torin's whisper turned into a growl. "Running makes it more fun." His footsteps changed from a walk to a loping jog. He was faster, stronger, and knew the territory. Panic threatened to choke me. The passage was sloping downward, the air growing damper, colder. I could hear the distant, echoing drip of water. My flint struck true, the candle wick caught with a tiny hiss. The sudden, fragile sphere of light revealed a tight, rough-hewn tunnel, its walls weeping with moisture. It was just wide enough for one person, no side passages, no hiding places. And it was a straight shot. Torin would see my light, he'd catch me in moments. Desperation birthed a mad idea. I stopped running. I pressed myself flat against the damp wall, my heart pounding so violently I was sure he could hear it. I raised the candle high, and then I threw it, not down the tunnel ahead, but back the way I'd come, as hard as I could. It spun through the air, a tiny fluttering comet of light, and clattered to the stone floor 20 yards behind me. Then, in the new and total darkness, I dropped to the ground and crawled as silently as I could, forward, away from the light source. Torin's shape loomed into the circle of candlelight. He paused, his silhouette a hulking shadow against the small flame. He chuckled. "Think a little darkness will save you, girl? It's like perfume." He began to walk toward the candle, his steps confident. He thought I was cowering behind it. As he passed my position, mere feet away, I held my breath, my face pressed to the frigid stone. The scent of him, cold iron and pine, was overwhelming. He reached the candle, nudged it with his boot. His head turned, peering down the dark tunnel ahead, where I actually was. "Playing games," he muttered, and then he started forward again, leaving the candle behind. Now he was between me and the only light. I was in utter blackness, but so was he, and I had a head start. I rose to my feet, my hands splayed against the walls, and began to move, faster now, guided by touch and the sound of dripping water. I had to put distance between us before his eyes adjusted. The tunnel began to curve, the dripping grew louder. And then my outstretched hands met not rough rock, but cold, smooth metal. A door, a circular, riveted door of black iron, like a hatch on a ship. There was a large locking wheel at its center. I grabbed the wheel and pulled. It didn't budge. I threw my weight into it, straining until my muscles burned. With a shriek of rust that sounded cataclysmic in the confined space, it turned a quarter rotation. I heard Torin's curse behind me. He'd heard it. "Found you," he snarled, and his footsteps broke into a sprint. Terror lent me strength. I heved again. The wheel turned fully. I hauled on the heavy door. It swung open with a groan, revealing a space of even deeper black and a rush of air that smelled of ozone and age. I stumbled through, turned, and pulled the door shut behind me. My fingers scrambled for the inner wheel. Finding it, I spun it just as a massive weight slammed into the other side. Thud. The door shuddered but held. Torin roared in frustration. I kept turning until the locking mechanism ground home with a final, solid clunk. For a moment, there was only the sound of my ragged breathing and the muffled, furious pounding from the other side. Then, silence. He was trapped. For now. I slumped against the door, my body trembling with adrenaline and exhaustion. I was safe. But where was I? I fumbled for my tinderbox again. My hands were shaking so badly it took half a dozen tries. Finally, a spark caught the charred cloth of the wick I'd saved. A tiny flame bloomed. It revealed a chamber that stole what little breath I had left. I was not in a tunnel or a cellar. I was in a vast circular vault. The walls were not stone, but seamless, polished black obsidian that drank the candlelight. The ceiling was a dome lost in shadow, and in the center of the room, illuminated as if by some unseen light source, stood a pedestal of pure, milky moonstone, and on that pedestal rested a single object. It was a circlet, not a crown of gold and gems, but something far more primal. It was woven from what looked like living silver and pale petrified wood, twisted together with an artistry that spoke of nature, not a smith. At the center, where it would rest on a wearer's forehead, was a stone that seemed to hold a fragment of the moon itself, a soft, pulsing internal luminescence that cast gentle, shifting shadows around the room. This was no weapon. It was a relic, an artifact of impossible age and power. A voice, soft and dry as autumn leaves, spoke from the shadows. It is called the Moon's Lament, or, by those who feared it, the Alpha's Burden. I whirled, my candle almost falling from my grasp. From behind the pedestal, a figure emerged. It was the ancient woman in my dream-like vision, Oracle Vanya. Her silver hair seemed to float in the still air, and her eyes held the same deep light as the circlet stone. "You," I breathed.
"You have passed the first test," she said, gliding closer. Her gaze was not on me, but on the circlet. Resourcefulness, desperation, the will to survive when the path is dark. She finally looked at me. "But that will only keep you alive in a tunnel. It will not help you against Kaelen Blackwood in the arena of echoes." "What is this place?" I asked, my voice echoing strangely in the obsidian chamber. "Why lead me here?" "This is the Vault of First Truth," she said, "and that," she pointed to the circlet, "is a legacy your blood has forgotten. It does not grant strength or speed. It does not make you invincible." She stepped so close I could see the millennia in the lines of her face. "It awakens truth. It forces the wolf and the human to become one, utterly. It removes all barriers, all fear, all pretense. What you are in your deepest soul is what you will become." My blood ran cold. "And if what I am is weak, or angry, or broken, then you will become weakness, rage, and shards," she said, her tone merciless. "The circlet is a crucible. It does not create, it reveals. It is the ultimate test of a ruler. Can you bear the full, unfiltered truth of yourself and still command?" "I don't want to command. I just want to live." "Then walk away," she said simply, gesturing to another, smaller door on the far side of the chamber. "That leads to a forgotten postern gate, and from there to the wilds. You can flee tonight, become a true rogue, live a small, hidden life, always running." The image was painfully tempting. Freedom, survival. But then I saw Kaelen's sneer. I heard Ilara's justification. I saw the faces of the nobles, hungry for my death. Running would mean they were right. It would mean every rejected wolf who came after me would know that even when given a chance, we chose to flee. "And if I stay?" I asked,
my eyes drawn back to the softly glowing circlet. If I take the test? If you survive the awakening of your true nature, Oracle Vanya said, her voice dropping to a whisper that vibrated in my bones, you will step into the arena not as Selene Frost, the rejected rogue. You will step in as what you were always meant to be. And Kaelen Blackwood, for all his trained strength, fights only with the power he was given. He has never faced a wolf who fights with the truth of what she is. I understood now. This was not about magic weapons. It was about identity. Kaelen's entire life was a performance, the perfect alpha. My life had been a mask of obscurity. The circlet would shatter both. What are the odds? I asked, the pragmatic question a lifeline in the sea of cosmic choice. Of surviving the lament's awakening? She considered. For most, 0. Their lies collapse them from the inside. For a Silverblood heir whose blood calls to the moonstone, perhaps 1 in 3. The same brutal math, death likely, but certain if I faced Kaelen as I was. From the other side of the iron door a new sound came, not pounding, a slow, steady, grinding screech. Torin was not just beating on the door, he was using a dagger or a piece of stone to try and work the locking mechanism from the other side. He was getting out. Time, the one thing I thought I had 6 nights of, was collapsing. Oracle Vanya watched me, waiting. The moon's lament glowed on its pedestal. The grinding at the door grew louder. I made my choice. Chapter 7. The crucible. The screech of metal on metal from the doorway was a serpent's hiss, counting down my final moments of choice. I looked from the serene, terrifying circlet to the ancient oracle's unreadable face, then to the small door of escape. My entire life had been a reaction to the cold, to hunger, to Ilara's cautious love, to Kaelen's rejection. I had never chosen my own path. I had only ever been swept along by currents of others' making. The grinding stopped. A moment of eerie silence was followed by a heavy metallic clack. The lock was disengaged. 1 in 3, I whispered, the odds settling in my soul not as a death sentence, but as a challenge. Better odds than I had in the arena. I stepped toward the moonstone pedestal. What do I do? A flicker of what might have been approval crossed Oracle Vanya's face. You wear it, and you do not take it off until the transformation is complete. No matter what you see, no matter what you feel, no matter what you become. The iron door groaned open behind me. Torin's silhouette filled the frame, his breathing ragged with effort and fury. You little... Go, Oracle Vanya commanded me, her voice suddenly imbued with a power that shook the obsidian walls. She didn't move toward Torin, but simply raised her hand. The air between them thickened, shimmering like a heat haze. Torin slammed into the invisible barrier as if hitting a stone wall, rebounding with a shocked grunt. I didn't wait. I reached out and my fingers closed around the moon's lament. It was not cold, nor warm. It hummed, a vibration that traveled up my arm and resonated in my teeth. The light in the central stone brightened, pulsating in time with my suddenly racing heartbeat. I lifted it. It was lighter than it looked. With a final glance at the furious, trapped beta and the implacable oracle, I placed the circlet on my head. For a second, nothing happened. Then the world dissolved. It wasn't pain, not at first. It was unraveling. I felt the seams of myself come loose. Memories, not as images but as raw sensory experiences, flooded me. The bite of the blizzard the night I was lost, the cold so sharp it felt like fire, the taste of Ilara's venison stew, comfort and a lie, both at once. The searing, beautiful agony of the mate bond's first spark when I saw Kaelen, hope, instantly poisoned. But deeper than memories, deeper than thought, came the truths.
The truth of my loneliness, a hollow ache I'd carried since childhood. The truth of my anger, not just at Kaelen and Ilara, but at the moon goddess herself for binding me to such cruelty. The truth of my fear, a bottomless black well I'd been peering into my whole life. And the truth of my wolf. Not the small, gray, timid creature I knew. That was a shadow, a caged thing. Her true shape began to press against the inside of my skin, and it was vast and wild and silver as a lightning strike. She was not just a part of me, she was me. And she was furious. She was proud. She was ancient. We are Silverblood. The thought was not in words, but in a cascade of knowing. It was a heritage of howling at the void and making it answer, of leading not through terror, but through an unbreakable bond of truth. My grandmother, my true grandmother, had not been a tyrant. She had been a unifier. Her power so absolute it demanded unity, and the jealous, fractured alphas of her time had destroyed her for it. They had rewritten history, calling her a despot, and hunted her bloodline to near extinction. The weight of this truth was a mountain on my chest. I couldn't breathe. I was collapsing under the sheer, unedited reality of who I was, who my family had been, and what had been stolen from us. No! The voice was my own, but also my wolf's, merged, inseparable. We do not collapse. We hold the mountain. The pain began then, the physical transformation. My bones did not break, they reforged. My cells screamed as they were rewritten not to a different shape, but to their true, intended shape. I felt my spine elongate, my muscles weave with cords of silver light, my senses explode outward. I could hear the heartbeat of every guard in the castle above. I could smell the fear on Torin, the calm power of Oracle Vanya, the distant, cold arrogance of Kaelen in his chambers. I could feel the pull of the moon, a tangible cord of silver light connecting the circlet on my brow to the celestial body above. I fell to my knees, a scream tearing from my throat that was part human sob, part wolf's howl of agonized ecstasy. Through the haze, I saw Torin break through Oracle Vanya's wavering barrier. His eyes fixed on me, widened in genuine primal terror. He was not seeing a woman or a wolf. He was seeing something legend made flesh, something that should not exist. "Abomination!" he snarled, drawing a long, serrated dagger from his belt. He lunged, not for Oracle Vanya, but for me, the source of the terrifying, power-saturated light. He never reached me. My hand, my clawed, half-transformed hand, shot out of its own volition. I didn't think, I didn't plan, I simply willed him to stop. And he did. He froze mid-stride, as if he had run into a wall of glass. His eyes bulged, confused, then terrified. He was not physically restrained. His own wolf, the animal core of him, had recognized its alpha, its true alpha, and it refused to move against me. I rose to my feet. The transformation was complete. I stood in a hybrid form, taller, powerfully built, with claws and fangs, my hair a cascade of living silver, my eyes blazing with captured moonlight. The circlet's light dimmed to a gentle pulse. I am Selene Silverblood, and I will not repeat the past. I will forge a new one. Oracle Vanya bowed her head, a gesture of deep respect. Then the crucible is past. The lament has judged you worthy. But be warned, child, the world is not a vault. It will not bow so easily. And Kaelen, he will have plans of his own. As if summoned by her words, a new, different tremor reached my enhanced senses, not from the tunnels, but from above. A specific, frantic heartbeat I recognized, Ilara's, and it was spiking with terror.
Something was happening in the castle, now. The challenge in the arena was still 4 days away, but the real battle for my life and my legacy had just jumped from the shadows onto the main stage. Chapter 8: The Web Tightens. The power of the moon's lament was not a roaring fire in my veins, but a deep, silent river, constant, undeniable, and mine to direct. As Oracle Vanya led me through the small postern gate, a path I had chosen not to take for escape, my senses were a sprawling, living map of the castle. I could feel the eddies of emotion, the boredom of night guards, the dreams of sleeping servants, the simmering ambitions of plotting nobles. And I could feel Ilara's fear. It was a sharp, bright needle of panic pulsing from the guest quarters in the West Wing. It was mixed with another scent, cold, chemical, and wrong. Not Kaelen's signature of frost and iron, something artificial, medicinal. "Something is wrong," I said, my new voice still strange to my own ears, layered with an echo of command. "Your enemies are moving." Oracle Vanya nodded, her own ancient senses likely perceiving the discord. "Your protection is a shield of law, not stone. Your display of power, even contained within the vault, will have sent ripples. Your enemies are moving." We emerged into a neglected kitchen garden, the herbs silvered by moonlight. The path to the West Wing was across open courtyards. "I can't be seen. If Kaelen knows I'm out of the tower, and like this—" "Then you must not be seen," she agreed. "But you must see. Remember, your power is not just in your limbs. It is in your connection. Reach out. Listen." I closed my eyes, leaning against the cold stone of the garden wall. I focused past the buzz of countless lives, homing in on that single point of terror. I pushed my awareness towards it, not to spy, but to... A second voice, smooth and clinical, replied, "The aggression is temporary, Alpha Ilara, a necessary side effect of the Blood Moon elixir. His physical capabilities are now triple their natural limit. His healing factor is accelerated beyond any recorded level. The girl won't survive the first clash." A low, guttural growl vibrated through my connection, a sound of pure, mindless fury. It was Kaelen, but it was not the cold, calculating Alpha. This was something raw and bestial. "You have turned him into a monster," Ilara wept. "I have ensured our future," the clinical voice answered. I recognized it now, Lord Vexus, the royal apothecary, a man rumored to dabble in forbidden arts. The Silverblood girl may have surprised us with archaic legalities, but in the arena, only strength matters. This elixir guarantees that strength. When he tears her apart, the message will be clear. The old blood is dead. True power belongs to those bold enough to seize it by any means. "And after?" Ilara pleaded. "When the world sees what he's become?" The elixir's peak lasts only 12 hours. By dawn after the fight, he will be himself again, a victorious Alpha having defended his honor against a dangerous mutant. The brief frenzy will be attributed to the heat of battle, the provocation of facing a corrupted bloodline, a tragic necessity. The plan was diabolical. Cheat to win, then use my awakened heritage as justification for the cheating. They would paint me as the monster and Kaelen as the noble warrior who put me down. My new calm threatened to crack. The fury of my wolf surged, wanting to tear through the walls and end them all. But the part of me that was Selene, the girl who had survived by hiding, by observing, held on. Rage was a weapon, but so was knowledge. I pulled my awareness back, opening my eyes to the moonlit garden. "They've poisoned him," I said to Oracle Vanya, my voice tight. "An elixir, to make him stronger, faster, but uncontrollable. They plan to have him kill me in a berserk rage, then blame my corrupted Silverblood nature for his actions. Oracle Vanya's face was grim. Vexus has always danced on the edge of blasphemy. This would cross the line, but without proof. I have proof, I said. I heard it, but testimony gained through this, I gestured to the circlet on my brow, would be dismissed as sorcery or lies. I thought rapidly. The elixir, it would have a source, a recipe, vials, something physical. Vexus's laboratory is in the lower levels of the North Tower, heavily warded. But wards are made to block magic and intent. They are less adept at sensing presence. A wolf who is perfectly in harmony with herself, whose spirit does not push against the world, but flows with it, might pass unseen. She was talking about stealth, not the stealth of shadows, but the stealth of stillness, of being so in tune with my own truth that I became like a stone, a tree, a natural part of the environment. Can you teach me in what time we have? I can show you the path. You must walk it, and we have until the guard changes at the North Tower in 1 hour. After that, the wards reset with a different key. An hour to master a spiritual discipline and break into the most secure chamber of a master alchemist. The impossibility of it should have crushed me. Instead, I felt the deep river of power within me flow steady. The truth of me was not a warrior, not a schemer. I was a survivor, and survivors adapt. Show me, I said. The next hour was the most mentally grueling of my life. It was not combat training, it was untraining. Oracle Vanya had me sit in the damp grass, focusing on the moon's lament's pulse, on my own breath, on the truth of my existence. She taught me to let my awareness expand without pushing, to feel the magical wards around the North Tower, not as walls to break, but as currents in a stream. To align my own energy so perfectly with the natural flow of the castle's ancient magic that I would slip through the gaps, creating no ripple, triggering no alarm. It was about acceptance, not fighting the world, but being so utterly at peace with myself that the world simply allowed me passage. When the moment came, I moved, not with a thief's swiftness, but with a meditative slowness. I walked across the open yard, under the gaze of the moon, and approached the fortified North Tower door. I could see the wards now, a shimmering, intricate web of silver light across the stone, humming with protective energy. I did not try to hide from them. I breathed in, feeling the truth of Selene Silverblood, daughter of the moon, heir to a lost line, a creature as natural as the stone itself. I stepped forward. The wards did not flare. They did not reject me. They parted around me like water around a smooth stone, their light flowing over my form without catching, without alarm. I laid a hand on the door. The physical lock was simple after the spiritual one. A touch of focused will, a gentle nudge of power, and it clicked open. Vexus's laboratory was a chamber of horrors. Gleaming glass vessels bubbled with unnaturally colored liquids, jagged crystals pulsed with captured lightning, and on a central table, surrounded by notes, was a setup that made my blood run cold. A delicate silver distillation apparatus, and beside it, 3 crystal vials filled with a viscous, blood-red liquid that seemed to swirl with a darkness of its own, the Blood Moon elixir. Next to the vials was a ledger. I opened it. Neat, precise script detailed the recipe, the side effects, extreme aggression, loss of higher cognitive function, temporary, and a delivery note. For Alpha Kaelen Blackwood, to be administered night of the challenge. Payment, guaranteed seat on the Royal Council for Apothecary Vexus. Proof, tangible, undeniable proof. I took 1 vial and the ledger page. As I turned to leave, my enhanced hearing caught a new sound from deep within the castle. Not fear or plotting. This was the sound of organized movement, boots, many of them, marching in disciplined formation, and they were heading toward the Tower of Ascension. My absence had been discovered, and Kaelen's men, perhaps led by a humiliated Tauren, were moving to secure their prisoner, or declare her a fugitive, voiding the challenge. The web was tightening from all sides. I had the proof of their deception, but I was out of time. I had to get back to my tower before they realized I was gone, or the king's protection would shatter, and I'd be hunted down before I ever reached the arena. I had the truth in my hand. Now I had to run the gauntlet to survive long enough to use it. Chapter 9. The Gauntlet. The proof, the cold crystal vial and damning ledger page burned a hole in my tunic pocket as I fled the North Tower. But the physical evidence was useless if I was caught outside my cell. The rhythmic approaching thunder of bootsteps was a timer counting down to 0. Oracle Vanya melted into the shadows of the garden as I passed, her voice a ghostly whisper in my mind. The servant's stare. Behind the ivy, it emerges near your tower. Go. I didn't question. I found the thick curtain of ivy she indicated on an old, crumbling wall. Behind it climbed, my new strength making the ascent swift and silent. The sounds of the searching guards echoed faintly through the stone, growing louder, then fading as I ascended past their level. The stair emerged into a dusty, linen-filled closet on the floor just below the Tower of Ascension. I could hear voices right outside my tower door, heavy with authority. Checked twice. She is not within. The king's protection does not extend to a fugitive. Commander Thorne's gravelly voice answered, calm but firm. She is under my watch until the challenge, Captain Rourke. You have no authority here. Stand down. My authority comes from Alpha Blackwood, whose challenge she will not be alive to meet if she's roaming the castle. We will search every stone. I had seconds. I slipped from the closet and into the empty hallway. The door to the spiral stairs leading up to my tower was just ahead, blocked by Thorne and 3 of Kaelen's warriors, led by a sneering captain. Thorne stood with his back to me, a solitary barrier. I couldn't fight my way through. I couldn't hide. Then I remembered Oracle Vanya's lesson. Presence, not push. I closed my eyes, drawing on the moon's lament's power. I focused not on making myself invisible, but on making myself unnoticeable. I aligned my essence with the quiet despair of the tower, with the ancient dust in the air, with the weary resignation of the stones. I became part of the background tapestry of the place. Holding my breath, I walked forward. I moved slowly, smoothly, right past Captain Rourke. He was mid-sentence, jabbing a finger at Thorne's chest. We'll hold you responsible if she has escaped to work more of her twisted magic. I was a ghost, a shadow attached to the wall. Neither Thorne nor the warriors glanced my way. Their eyes simply slid over me as if I were empty space. The power of it was staggering, not invisibility, but perfect spiritual camouflage. I reached the spiral staircase and began to ascend, still holding the delicate state of non-being. Behind me, the argument continued. I heard Thorne say, "Search the lower floors if you must. This tower remains under my guard." I reached my chamber door. It was unlocked, standing slightly ajar. I slipped inside and released the focusing breath. The sense of merging with the stone faded, leaving me solid and real again in the center of the room. I quickly shoved the vial and ledger page deep into the straw mattress. Just in time. Heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs. The door was flung open. Captain Rourke stood there, flanked by 2 warriors, with Commander Thorne behind them, his face unreadable. Rourke's eyes swept the room, landing on me where I stood perfectly still by the window. His expression flickered from triumph to confusion to fury. How? The lower floors were clear. As I said, Thorn remarked dryly, stepping into the doorway, she has been here all along. Perhaps your intelligence was flawed, Captain Rourke. Rourke snarled, his gaze raking over me with palpable hatred. This isn't over, Frost. The Alpha will hear of this disruption. He spun on his heel and stormed away, his warriors following. Thorn lingered for a moment after they'd gone. He didn't look at me, but his voice was low. The walls have ears, and some of them are on your side, but even friendly ears can be severed if you strain them too far. Then he too was gone, locking the door behind him. I slumped against the wall, the adrenaline crash making my hands shake. I had done it. I had the proof. I was safe, for now, but the cost of that safety was the revelation that Kaelen's reach extended even to the Royal Guard. Captain Rourke's blatant attempt to seize me was a declaration. The King's law was a thin veneer, already cracking under the pressure of Blackwood ambition. The next 2 days were a strange, suspended agony. I trained in my small space, my movements now fluid and sure, my body responding with a grace and power that was entirely new. I was learning the limits of my awakened strength, which felt boundless, but I also practiced the stillness, the perfect harmony I'd used to evade Rourke. It was my true weapon, not against Kaelen's strength, but against the chaos he represented. Food came regularly from the stone-faced guard with the scar, the one who had told me of Master Silas's walk. She never spoke, but today, beneath the bowl of stew, was another folded square of paper. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. The arena is prepared, but the sand is not neutral. Silver ash has been mixed into the combat circle floor. It will weaken a Silverblood's connection to the moon, slow your reflexes, burn your paws. They mean to hobble you before the fight begins. The mixer is a man named Grunt in the Royal Kennels. He drinks his sorrows away at the Howling Cask Tavern after the moon peaks. My blood went cold, silver ash, powdered moonstone corrupted by dark fire. It was toxic to my bloodline, a known poison from the Purge Wars. They weren't just cheating with Kaelen, they were poisoning the very ground I'd stand on. The game was so much dirtier than I imagined. It wasn't just a fight, it was an extermination disguised as a duel. I had to stop Grunt. I had to expose this too. But how? I was a prisoner with 2 days left. That night, as the moon reached its peak, I sat on the floor, the moon's lament cool on my brow. I reached out with my new senses, not to listen to whispers, but to feel the castle. I sought a specific signature, not of malice, but of sorrow, of regret, soaked in cheap ale. I found it, a dim, flickering, emotional ember, bitter and lonely, in a noisy, raucous pool of other feelings, the Howling Cask. I focused on that one point of sorrow, of regret, of a man who knew he'd done a terrible thing. And then I did something I hadn't known I could do. I didn't send a thought, I sent a feeling, a wave of calm understanding, a question without words. Why? In the tavern miles away, I felt the man, Grunt, jolt, spilling his drink. His sorrow spiked, mixed with shock and fear. I pushed gently, not to compel, but to invite confession, to offer an unseen ear for a burden too heavy to carry. The feeling that returned was a jumble, images of gold coins pressed in his hand by a man in a black cloak, the threat against his sick daughter, the gritty feel of the silver ash as he mixed it into the sand under cover of night, overwhelming guilt.
I sent back another pulse. It is not too late. The daughter can be helped, but the poison must be undone. I felt his resolve harden, then break. A decision. He stood up from his table, leaving his drink, and stumbled out into the night, heading not home, but toward the arena. I pulled my awareness back, trembling. I had just influenced a man's will from a distance. The power was terrifying. Was this what my grandmother could do? Is this what made them fear her? I didn't know if Grunt would actually remove the ash. I had shown him a path to redemption, but fear was a powerful chain.
All I could do was wait and prepare for a fight that was now rigged on multiple, invisible levels. Chapter 10. The Visitor. The day before the challenge dawned gray and grim, the sun hidden behind a blanket of iron clouds. A storm was brewing, both in the sky and in the fate awaiting me. The air in my tower felt charged, thick with impending violence. I was running through a series of defensive poses when a new, unexpected sound came from the door. Not the guard's knock, not a tray, a soft, hesitant tapping. I went still. Who is it? It's Arya. Arya Moonshadow. The voice was young, female, and trembled slightly. I didn't know that name. What do you want? Please, I have to speak with you. It's about Kaelen. Every instinct warned me it was a trap, but something in her voice, a raw, genuine fear, made me pause. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. I'm listening. The slot in the door slid open, not the guard's face, but a different one. Pale, ethereally beautiful, with eyes the color of twilight and hair like spun gold. A high-born she-wolf. Her eyes were red-rimmed. He did this before, she whispered urgently, her words tumbling out. The rejection. I was to be his chosen mate, an alliance between the Moonshadow and Blackwood packs. But then he found his true mate, a gentle she-wolf from the southern marshes named Lyanna. The bond was real. I saw it in his eyes for just a moment, before he smothered it. My breath caught. What happened to her? He rejected her, publicly, said she wasn't strong enough, her bloodline too plain. She accepted it. She just disappeared into the roguelands. I heard she died of a broken heart within a year. She pressed closer to the slot. He's not rejecting you because you're weak, Selene. He's rejecting you because the bond with you is the strongest he's ever felt. It terrifies him. He can't control it, so he has to destroy it. Her words confirmed what I felt, what Celeste's journal and the other story had hinted at. Kaelen was a prisoner of his own fear, a coward wearing an alpha's pelt. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice hushed. Because I've been a pawn in their games my whole life, she hissed, her fear morphing into anger. Bred for alliance, valued for my blood, not my mind. What you did in that throne room, it gave me hope. If you can stand up to him, maybe others can too. Maybe we don't have to be pieces on their board. She shoved a small, leather-bound book through the slot. It fell to the floor with a soft thump. This was Lyanna's. She left it behind. It's not about fighting. It's about him, his patterns, his tells, the little cracks in his armor that only someone who loved him could see. I picked up the journal, its leather soft and worn. Thank you, Arya. This is more valuable than any weapon. Don't thank me, she said, looking over her shoulder nervously. Just survive. Tomorrow night, half the wolves in that arena will be watching, hoping you lose. But the other half, the ones like me, the ones who've been traded and silenced, will be holding our breath, hoping you win. She disappeared from the slot. I heard her rapid footsteps retreating down the stairs. I sat on my bed and opened Lyanna's journal. The handwriting was elegant, flowing, full of love that curdled into heartbreak. Entry 7. Kaelen loves strategy games. He always protects his left flank instinctively, ever since a childhood injury there. It's a subconscious habit. Entry 12. When he's truly angry, not just performing anger, his right ear twitches just once before he attacks. Entry 19. He believes overwhelming force wins everything. He has no patience for a fight of attrition. If you can make him chase you, make him work, his frustration will make him reckless. It was a blueprint, not for defeating his strength, but for unraveling his mind. As I read, I felt my connection to the arena through Grunt, the sorrowful kennel master. A new, clean feeling washed back to me, determination followed by the gritty physical sensation of shoveling, of lifting, of replacing tainted sand with clean, river-washed grit. He had done it. He had undone the poison. One plot thwarted, but how many more were in motion? The storm outside broke as night fell. Thunder rattled the stone towers, and rain lashed the narrow window. In the fury of the gale, another, more subtle sound reached me, a sound only my enhanced hearing could pick up. The creak of armor, the whisper of cloth, not from the hallway, but from outside, on the tower wall itself. I moved to the window, peering out into the sheeting rain. For a moment, I saw nothing but darkness and silver streaks of water. Then a flash of lightning illuminated the scene, freezing it in stark, terrifying clarity. Two figures, clad in black, water-slicked leather, were climbing the tower wall, using hooked claws. Assassins. They were 20 feet below my window, moving with lethal, spider-like grace. Kaelen's final solution. Why risk the arena at all? A tragic accident on the stormy night before the challenge. The rogue wolf, frightened of her fate, tried to escape and fell to her death. The king's protection meant nothing against the weather and gravity. They were coming, and for the first time, I had no hidden door, no oracle, no network of allies to save me. I was trapped at the top of a stone needle with professional killers climbing to my throat. The arena was tomorrow, but it seemed I would have to fight for my life tonight first. Chapter 11. The Storm's Teeth. The lightning faded, plunging the world back into roaring darkness and rain. But the image of those two dark shapes clinging to the stone was burned into my vision. They were not wolves in a frenzy. They were tools, precise and efficient. This was no crime of passion. It was an execution. My mind, sharpened by the lament and honed by days of mental discipline, raced. I had no weapon. The room was my cage, but a cage could become a trap for the hunters.
I moved swiftly. I overturned the heavy wooden desk, dragging it with newfound strength to barricade the door, not to keep them out, but to delay anyone from entering normally, to funnel them to the window. I then yanked the straw mattress from the bed and shoved it against the wall beneath the window slit, obscuring it in shadow. Then I extinguished the single candle, plunging the room into blackness, broken only by the occasional flash of lightning through the narrow window. I didn't hide. I stood in the center of the room, in the open space I'd used for training, and I waited. I reached for the deep, still river of power within me. I became part of the storm's fury, part of the tower's ancient, unfeeling stone. Let them come. The first hint was a soft scrape of metal on stone at the window ledge. A black-gloved hand gripped the edge, then another. A figure hauled itself up with effortless strength, a silhouette against the slightly less dark sky. He paused, peering into the black room, a knife clenched in his teeth. He saw the barricaded door. He saw the empty bed. He saw no one. He swung a leg over the ledge, dropping silently into the room, his companion right behind him. They moved like liquid shadow, fanning out, eyes scanning. They were good. They didn't speak. They communicated with minute hand signals. They thought I was hiding, cowering under the bed or behind the overturned desk. I let them take 2 steps into the room. Then, as lightning flashed again, illuminating their surprised faces as they registered the empty space, I moved. I didn't roar. I didn't snarl. I simply was in front of the first assassin, my hand closing around his wrist before his knife could rise. My movement was silent, a ripple in the dark. I used his own momentum, twisting and pulling. He crashed into his partner with a grunt. Chaos. They recovered with terrifying speed, disentangling, knives appearing in both their hands now. They came at me in a coordinated pincer movement, blades aimed for vital points, throat, heart. No sport, just murder.
I had trained for a wolf's charge, not a dancer's knife fight, but the lament had awoken more than my heritage. It had awakened my instincts. My body knew things my mind did not. I flowed between their strikes like water. A blade hissed past my ear, embedding itself in the wooden door behind me. I ducked under a horizontal slash, coming up inside the second assassin's guard. My palm struck his sternum, not with brute force, but with a focused pulse of the moon's energy I now carried. The shockwave was silent, but devastating. He flew backward as if yanked by a wire, slamming into the stone wall and slumping, unconscious. The first assassin froze for a split second, shocked by the unnatural display. That was all I needed. I didn't attack him. I looked at him. I let the moon's lament on my brow brighten just a little, casting my features in an eerie silver light. I let him see the truth of what I was, not a frightened girl, but something ancient and commanding. "Drop your weapon," I said, my voice the calm eye of the storm. His knife clattered to the floor. His eyes were wide, his breath coming in ragged pants. He wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid of the unknown standing before him. "Who sent you?" I asked. He shook his head, jaw clenched. "A professional." I took a step closer. "You will answer, not to me, to your king. You will tell him who paid you to violate his royal decree. You will name every name." I reached out and placed 2 fingers on his temple. I didn't invade his mind. I simply showed him a vision, a clear, unshakable memory of this moment, of his confession, of his determination to seek the king's justice for the crime he was ordered to commit. I imprinted the need to confess upon his very soul. His resolve shattered. "Vexus," he blurted. "Lord Vexus hired us, paid from Blackwood coffers. The Alpha wanted it clean, deniable." Vexus, the apothecary. Of course, the web connected. "You will go to the king's chambers now," I instructed, my voice leaving no room for argument. "Your unconscious friend will accompany you. You will tell your story." The assassin, moving like a sleepwalker, hoisted his partner over his shoulder. He looked at the window, then at the barricaded door. I walked to the door and, with a thought, unbarred it by shifting the desk aside through sheer will. The door swung open, revealing the stunned face of the night guard. The assassin shuffled past him without a word, carrying his burden down the spiral stairs. The guard stared at me, then at the retreating figures, his mouth agape. "There was an attempted breach. It has been handled. You may inform Commander Thorne." I closed the door on his astonished face and leaned against it, the storm of the fight leaving me trembling. I had won, without killing, by using truth and will as my weapons. But the victory was hollow. The attempt proved Kaelen and his allies would stop at nothing. The arena tomorrow would be the most dangerous place in the world for me, regardless of the rules. I walked to the window. The rain was easing. The storm was passing. Dawn was not far off. My final day had arrived. I had proof of their chemical cheating. I had knowledge of his psychological weaknesses. I had survived their assassination attempt. I had the moon's lament and my awakened truth. I was as ready as I would ever be. But as the first gray light of dawn touched the horizon, a new, profound realization settled over me. Tomorrow night wasn't just about surviving Kaelen. It was about deciding what kind of Alpha, what kind of world would rise from the ashes of our fight. Would I become the avenging spirit of the Silverbloods, drowning the world in moonfire, or could I find another way? The final and most difficult challenge was not in the arena, it was in the mirror of my own soul. Chapter 12. The King's Gambit. Dawn did not bring peace. It brought a new kind of tension, as taut and silent as a bowstring at full draw. The storm had washed the world clean, leaving the air sharp and cold, but it could not wash away the schemes that clung to the castle stones like mold. I expected repercussions from the previous night, more guards, accusations, perhaps even Kaelen himself storming the tower in a fury over his failed plot. Instead, I received a summons. The door opened not for Meal, but for Commander Thorn himself, his face more grim than usual. "The king commands your presence, Selene Frost, immediately." My heart stuttered. Was this it? Had the assassin's confession been twisted? Was I to be condemned before I ever reached the arena? I had no choice. I followed him, the moon's lament a comforting, constant weight on my brow, hidden beneath a fold of the cloak's hood. We did not go to the throne room. Thorn led me through a series of increasingly private corridors, finally stopping before a set of unmarked dark wood doors. He knocked once, then pushed them open, gesturing for me to enter alone. The room beyond was a solar, a private, sunlit chamber filled with books, maps, and the scent of aged paper and cedar. King Aldrich stood at a wide window, his back to me, looking out over his glistening, rain-washed kingdom. He did not turn. "Close the door," he said, his voice devoid of its usual theatrical timbre. It was the voice of a tired old wolf. I did so, the click of the latch echoing in the quiet room. "Last night," he began, still gazing out the window, "two men attempted to scale the Tower of Ascension. They were apprehended by my guards after they presented themselves at my private chambers and confessed to a plot orchestrated by my royal apothecary and funded by one of my most powerful alphas." He finally turned. His ancient eyes were not amused, not intrigued. They were weary and deeply, profoundly angry. They were remarkably forthcoming, as if compelled by divine truth. He knew about the lament, about my power. I said nothing. I merely met his gaze. For days, my castle has been a nest of whispers and plots, a challenged alpha chemically augmenting himself, silver ash smuggled into the sacred combat sand, though I understand that particular problem has been rectified by a guilty conscience, and now attempted murder under my own roof against a wolf under my protection. He stopped before me, and for the first time I saw not a distant monarch, but a ruler struggling to hold a cracking world together. "You have not just invoked an old law, girl. You have lit a fuse on a powder keg that has been sitting in our basement for 300 years. "I did not light it, Your Majesty," I said, finding my voice. I merely refused to be the one smothered when it finally exploded. The powder was always there, the grievances, the cheating, the belief that power means you are above the very laws that grant you legitimacy. A faint, humorless smile touched his lips. "Spoken like a true Silverblood, your grandmother gave very similar speeches." He walked to his desk and picked up two items, the crystal vial of Blood Moon elixir and the ledger page. These were delivered to me anonymously this morning, along with a detailed account of Lord Vexus's activities. The evidence is irrefutable. My breath caught. Oracle Vanya, or someone in her network, they had delivered the proof. "The law is clear," King Aldrich said, setting the items down. "Cheating a blood challenge is a capital offense for both the cheater and anyone who aids him. I could arrest Kaelen Blackwood and Lord Vexus this hour and have them executed by sunset." Hope, bright and fierce, flared in my chest. It could end now, without more bloodshed. "But," the king said, the word dashing that hope against the rocks, "but if I do that, I do not solve the problem. I merely behead its current figurehead. The northern timberlands would erupt into civil war without their alpha. A dozen ambitious betas would tear the territory apart, dragging neighboring packs into the conflict. The message would be that the crown crushes powerful alphas with technicalities. Fear would spread, but not respect. And the deeper rot, the belief that might makes right, that the ends justify any means, would remain, festering in the dark." He leaned on his desk, his shoulders slumping. I am old, Selene. I have held this kingdom together with a mix of wisdom, cunning, and sheer force of will for longer than you can imagine. But I see the cracks. I have always seen them. Your grandmother saw them too, and her solution was to weld the cracks shut with absolute power. Mine has been to carefully balance atop them. Both approaches have failed. I understood then why he had allowed my challenge to proceed, why he had been so fascinated. He wasn't just watching a spectacle, he was looking for a new answer. "What would you have me do?" I asked quietly. "Win," he said, his eyes locking onto mine with desperate intensity. "Win your challenge, but win it fairly, in front of everyone. Expose his weakness not as a criminal to be arrested, but as a fighter to be defeated. Show the kingdom that the old way, brute force, cheating, fear, can be overcome by something new, by truth, by resilience, by a different kind of strength." The weight of what he was asking settled on me, heavier than any crown. "I will do my best, Your Majesty," I said, the promise feeling inadequate. "I know you will," he replied, "but there is one more thing, the moon's lament. Oracle Vanya has informed me of its return. It is a relic of immense power and immense danger. It shows the truth, but truth is a weapon that can cut the wielder most deeply. In the arena, with your life on the line, with the rage of your bloodline singing in your veins, can you wield truth without being consumed by it? Can you defeat Kaelen without becoming a monster yourself?" He had asked the question that had haunted me since donning the circlet. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but I will try." He nodded, seeming to accept that. "Then go, prepare. The arena awaits you at midnight. And Selene," I paused at the door. He nodded, seeming to accept that. "Then go, prepare. The arena awaits you at midnight. And Selene," I paused at the door. "The eyes of history are upon you, but more importantly, the eyes of every wolf who has ever been told they are not enough. They are upon you too. Do not give them a tragedy. Give them a legend." I left the solar, the king's words echoing in the silent corridors of my mind. The path was clear and more terrifying than ever. I was no longer fighting just for my life. I was fighting for the soul of my people, and I had to win without losing my own in the process. The final battle had not yet begun, but the greatest challenge was already here. Holding on to myself when the world demanded I become something else. Chapter 13. The Arena of Echoes. The hours bled away, each moment stretched thin and taut, vibrating with the tension of a plucked bowstring. I was returned to my tower, not as a prisoner, but as a champion in waiting. The guard outside my door was no longer the bored veteran, but Commander Thorn himself. His silent, unwavering presence was a greater comfort than any words. As the sun began its final descent, painting the sky in bruised purples and bloody reds, the preparations began. Servants came, not with a tray, but with a deep copper bath and steaming water scented with winter pine and sage, a ritual cleansing for combatants. They brought fresh clothes, simple, sturdy leather trousers, a dark tunic, and boots made for gripping sand. They did not speak, but their eyes held a new emotion as they looked at me, not pity, but a kind of fearful awe. I bathed, the hot water doing little to ease the cold knot of destiny in my stomach. I dressed. I ate the meal they brought, plain, hearty food for strength. I performed my stretching exercises, feeling my awakened muscles coil and release with a potent, silent energy. And through it all, the moon's lament hummed against my brow, a constant, gentle reminder of the truth I carried. I meditated, as Oracle Vanya had taught me, seeking the still center within the coming storm. I saw not Kaelen's face, but the faces Arya had spoken of, Liana, the gentle she-wolf who faded away, the countless unnamed rejected mates, the hungry children of the Frostfang pack for whom I'd been traded. I saw Ilara's tear-streaked face, a map of regret. I saw the king's weary, hopeful eyes. This was not about vengeance. It was about breaking a chain. A deep, resonant bell began to toll, its sound vibrating through the very stones of the castle. Midnight. Thorn opened the door. "It is time." I followed him out of the tower for the last time. The corridors were no longer deserted. They were lined with people. Servants, guards, minor nobles, healers, all stood in silent ranks as I passed. No cheers, no jeers, just a profound, watchful silence. They were witnesses. We emerged into the cool night. The full moon hung directly overhead, a perfect, luminous pearl in a velvet sky, its light so bright it cast sharp shadows. Before us lay the Arena of Echoes. It was an ancient open-air bowl carved into the living rock of a mountainside. Torches blazed in sconces around its upper rim, and the tiered stone seats were already packed with a murmuring, shimmering sea of wolves. The air thrummed with their collective energy, bloodlust, curiosity, fear, hope. The scent of them was overwhelming, perfume, sweat, fur, and anticipation. At the arena's north end was the royal box, where King Aldrich sat, flanked by his council. To his right, in a box draped in black and silver, sat Kaelen's court. I saw Ilara there, her face a pale moon, hands clenched in her lap. I did not see Lord Vexus. At the south end was a simple open gate, the Challenger's entrance. Thorn stopped at the edge of the sand. "The rules have been proclaimed. Shifted combat, no weapons, no external interference. Fight to the death." He met my eyes, his grizzled face grave. "But you know the true rules, the ones written in the heart. Fight well, Selene Silverblood." He used my true name. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat, and stepped through the gate onto the sand. It was fine, white, and cool beneath my boots. I walked to the center of the vast circle, my footsteps the only sound in the sudden, dead hush. I could feel the silver ash was gone, replaced with clean grit. Grunt had kept his promise. I looked up at the moon, feeling its pull resonate with the stone on my brow, and lowered my hood. A collective gasp rippled through the arena as the moon's lament was revealed, its soft internal light a tiny echo of the celestial body above. Whispers exploded like startled birds. Silverblood, the circlet, the moon's lament? From the opposite gate, Kaelen emerged. He was magnificent. In his human form, he was a statue of martial perfection, clad in black fighting leathers. His storm-gray eyes found me instantly, and I saw the change in them. The cold calculation was still there, but underneath swam a chaotic, violent hunger, the blood moon elixir simmering just beneath the surface. His right hand twitched, a tiny repetitive spasm. The chemical fire was already straining his control. He strode to the center, stopping 10 paces from me. The air between us crackled with the shattered remnants of our mate bond, a twisted, painful static. "You wear a stolen relic," he said, his voice a low growl meant only for me. "It won't save you. Nothing can save you from what I've become." "I don't need saving from you, Kaelen," I replied, my voice calm, carrying in the quiet. "I need to show you what you've become, and what you could have been." His lip curled in a snarl. The elixir-fueled anger flared, but he held it, barely. He was trying to appear in control. "Spare me your sermons, rogue. Tonight you die, and the natural order is restored." High Priestess Anya, an elderly she-wolf in moon-white robes, stepped to the edge of the royal box. Her voice, amplified by magic, rang out, "Combatants, you stand under the moon goddess's gaze, bound by the ancient blood rite. There are no rules but survival. Do you both enter this circle of your own will?" "I do," Kaelen barked. All eyes turned to me. I looked not at the priestess, not at the king, but at the thousands of unknown faces in the shadows. "I do." "Then let the challenge begin." The word was a trigger. Kaelen didn't shift, he exploded. 1 second he was a man, the next a massive jet-black wolf the size of a horse, muscles coiling like steel cables, saliva dripping from fangs as long as daggers. The shift was instantaneous, brutal, fueled by the elixir. A roar of approval erupted from his supporters. He didn't circle, he didn't test. He came straight at me like a cannonball of fur and fury, a blur of motion aimed to end the fight in the first 3 seconds, just as Thorn had said. This was the moment. Would I become the lightning? Would I meet force with force? I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second. I found the still river within. I did not meet his charge. I flowed. As he reached me, I was not there. I sidestepped with that preternatural, harmonious grace, my movement so efficient it was like the wind parting around a rock. His massive jaws snapped shut on empty air with a sound like a bear trap. His momentum carried him past me. The crowd's roar faltered in confusion. Kaelen skidded in the sand, whirling, his eyes blazing with feral confusion and rage. He charged again, and again I evaded, not with a frantic leap, but with a subtle shift of weight, a pivot on the ball of my foot. I was not fighting him, I was dancing with his anger. He roared, the sound tinged with frustration. He expects fear, Thorn had said. He uses it. I gave him none. I gave him serenity. On his third charge, I didn't just evade. As he passed, I lashed out with a hand, not a punch, but a sharp, precise tap on the point of his left shoulder, the old injury site Liana's journal had revealed. He yelped, more in surprise than pain, stumbling. It wasn't a wound, it was a message. I know you. The elixir's fire was burning through his patience. His attacks grew wilder, less coordinated. He was a storm of teeth and claws, but I was the eye, perpetually calm, perpetually just out of reach. I let him wear himself down, let the artificial rage burn his own energy. The crowd was utterly silent now, mesmerized. This was not the slaughter they'd paid to see. This was something strange and new. After minutes that felt like hours, Kaelen stood panting, his sides heaving, foam flecking his muzzle. The mindless fury in his eyes was giving way to something worse, a cold, hateful realization. He couldn't catch me. His strength was useless. "Shift, you coward," he snarled through the broken bond in my mind. "Fight me as a wolf." "Why?" I sent back, my mental voice calm. "So you can feel like you're fighting an equal? You gave up that right when you drank Vexus's poison." He flinched as if struck. The mention of the elixir, of his cheating in front of the psychic witness of the entire arena, pierced his pride. With a scream of pure, unadulterated wrath, he gathered himself for one final, all-out assault. This time, he didn't just charge. He feinted left, then lunged right, using a fraction of his strategic mind. It was his best move, and I saw it, because his right ear twitched just once, exactly as Liana had written. I didn't dodge. I stepped into the attack. As his monstrous form collided with me, I finally called upon my wolf, but not with a scream of defiance, with a sigh of acceptance. My shift was not an explosion, it was an unfolding. Light, not sound. Where Kaelen was darkness and fury, I was moonlight given form. My fur emerged, not a monstrous direwolf, but a creature of elegant, terrifying grace. Sleek and powerful, my fur was the color of a moonlit snowfield, shimmering with silver sheen. The moon's lament was now a band of light across my brow. I was smaller than him, but I radiated an aura of ancient, undeniable authority. His jaws closed on my shoulder. Pain, white-hot and searing, shot through me. The crowd gasped. But I did not retaliate with tooth and claw. Instead, I turned my head and I looked at him. I poured my consciousness into that gaze, through the broken bond point, through the moon's lament's power to reveal truth. I showed him, not images, but feelings. The beautiful, terrifying vulnerability of our first bond spark, the hollow, cowardly fear that made him reject it, the pathetic, artificial strength of the elixir burning in his veins, the lonely, empty throne his victory would secure. And I showed him with perfect clarity the truth of what he was in that moment. Not a mighty alpha, but a scared pup, cheated by his own hand, trying to murder the one being who had ever truly seen him. His bite faltered, the pressure on my shoulder eased, the feral rage in his eyes shattered, replaced by a horrified, soul-deep recognition. He saw himself, truly, for the first time. He released me, stumbling back as if my blood was acid. He shifted back to human form, collapsing to his knees in the sand, his body shaking not from exertion, but from a devastating psychic shock. He stared at his own hands, the hands that had taken the elixir, that had ordered the ash, that had sent the assassins. The arena was a tomb. No one breathed. I shifted back to my human form, the wound on my shoulder already closing, knitting together with a faint silver glow. I stood before him, bleeding but unbowed. I did not speak to the crowd. I spoke only to him, my voice soft but carrying to every corner of the silent bowl. The challenge is to the death, Kaelen Blackwood, but death has many forms. I looked at the broken Alpha weeping in the sand. You are already dead. The wolf you were supposed to be died the moment you chose fear over faith, poison over truth. I will not kill your body. That would be a mercy you do not deserve. I turned and faced the royal box, then the stunned, silent thousands. I raised my voice, the moon's lament blazing like a tiny star on my forehead. I claim victory by submission, and by the blood right and the laws of this kingdom, I claim my compensation. I claim the borderlands of the northern timberlands to establish a new pack, a sanctuary. And I claim justice, not just for me, but for every wolf who has been betrayed by the very laws meant to protect them. The silence held for one more heartbeat. Then, from the cheap seats high in the shadows, a single ragged cheer went up, then another, and another. It was not the nobles, it was the servants, the guards, the minor pack members, the overlooked and the forgotten. The sound swelled, a rolling wave of approval that crashed over the arena, shaking the very stones. In the royal box, King Aldrich rose to his feet. He did not smile, he simply nodded once, a gesture of profound acknowledgement. I had won, not just the fight, I had won the story. But as I looked at Kaelen broken and weeping, and at the sea of newly hopeful faces, I knew the hardest part was just beginning. Victory in the arena was one thing, building what came after would be the true test.
The legend was born tonight. Tomorrow, the work would start.
Chapter 14. The Ashes of Dawn. The roaring of the crowd was a physical force, a tidal wave of sound that washed over the arena sand. It was not uniform. Mingled with the cheers from the shadows were the stunned, angry silences from the noble boxes, the Blackwood contingent sitting in rigid, humiliated shock. But the prevailing current was one of jubilant, disbelieving hope. They had witnessed the impossible. Power confronted not with greater power, but with something unnameable, truth. I stood in the center of it, the adulation a distant roar in my ears. My focus was on the trembling figure of Kaelen Blackwood. 2 royal guards approached him, not with brutality, but with a grim formality. They helped him to his feet. He offered no resistance, his spirit shattered, and led him away, not to a celebration, but to the dungeons beneath the castle, to await the king's judgment on his cheating. His eyes met mine for a fleeting second as he passed, empty of everything but a hollow, horrifying understanding. He was a ghost already. King Aldrich's magically amplified voice cut through the din. "Silence!" The arena obeyed, the cheers subsiding into a buzzing anticipation. "The challenge is concluded," he proclaimed, his ancient voice resonating with finality. "Victory goes to Selene Silverblood by submission and moral ascendancy. The terms of the blood right are hereby fulfilled. The borderlands of the northern timberlands, from the Ashen River to the Whispering Peaks, are granted to her in perpetuity to rule as sovereign Alpha. Furthermore," he paused, his gaze sweeping over the assembled Alphas, "the attempted corruption of this sacred right through chemical enhancement and physical sabotage is a crime against the crown and the moon goddess. The perpetrators will face justice. Let this night mark an end to the old ways of deceit. Let a new era begin, one where strength is measured by integrity, not just by tooth and claw." His words were a decree, a rewriting of history in a single speech. He was cementing the narrative we had gambled on. The crowd erupted again, this time with a more unified fervor. I saw faces streaked with tears, Area Moonshadow clutching the rail of her family's box, the scar-faced guard who'd helped me, standing stiffly at attention but with a gleam in her eye. Even Grunt, the kennel master, hidden in the very back, his shoulders shaking with what might have been sobs of relief. I was escorted from the arena not by guards, but by Commander Thorne and a contingent of the king's personal retinue, an honor guard. The path back to the castle was a blur of torchlight and staring faces. I was no longer a prisoner or a curiosity. I was a sovereign. The weight of it was immense, a mantle of expectations settling on my wounded shoulder. I was taken not to the Tower of Ascension, but to a suite of rooms in the royal wing, spacious, airy, overlooking the mountains. A healer was waiting, a quiet, competent she-wolf who tended to the bite on my shoulder with herbal poultices. "The Ashen River's energy has already done most of the work," she murmured with reverence. "I am merely cleaning the wound." When she left, I was alone. The silence was profound. I stood at the window, the first hint of gray dawn bleeding into the eastern sky. The moon had set. The circlet on my brow had dimmed to a faint, warm glow. The door opened softly. I didn't need to turn. I felt her presence like a cool, clear stream entering the room. Oracle Vanya. She moved to stand beside me, following my gaze to the emerging dawn. "You did not kill him," she said, not as a question but in observation. "I did not kill him," I replied, my voice hoarse. Killing him would have proven nothing. It would have just been the strong defeating the weak, again. This breaks the pattern. "It does," she agreed, "but patterns resist breaking. The Alphas who benefited from the old ways will not simply accept this new story. Kaelen was a symbol. With him broken, they will be frightened, and frightened wolves are dangerous. I know, I said, the burden of it pressing down. The king has given me land, but no pack, a title, but no army. I have a crown of moonlight and a territory of ashes. Where do I even begin? You begin, she said gently, by accepting that you do not begin alone. She gestured to the door. You have visitors, the first of many, I suspect. The first to enter was Ilara. She looked decades older, her face ravaged by guilt and sleeplessness. She stood just inside the door, unable to meet my eyes, winding her hands. Selene, Alpha Silverblood, I have no right to ask for anything. I came only to resign my position as Alpha of the Frostbang Pack. The pack is yours if you will have it, and to beg your forgiveness, though I know it is not mine to receive. I looked at the woman who had been my mother, who had traded me like cattle. The hurt was a deep, cold stone in my chest, but the blinding rage was burned away in the arena's crucible. I do not forgive you, Ilara, and she flinched. Not yet. Forgiveness is a journey, not a transaction. But your pack, they are innocent of your choice. They are hungry and afraid. I will not punish them for your sin. I took a deep breath. You will remain Alpha of the Frostbang Pack, but you will be a vassal to the new Silverblood Pack. You will govern under new laws, my laws, laws that protect the weak, that honor bonds, that value loyalty over political convenience. This is your chance to rebuild, not just your territory, but your soul. Do not waste it. She fell to her knees, weeping openly, great heaving sobs of shame and a fragile, tentative hope. I will. I swear it on the moon. Thank you. I nodded, too exhausted for more. Go, tend to your people. She left, and another figure took her place in the doorway. Arya Moonshadow. She was no longer trembling. Her twilight eyes were clear and fierce. Alpha Silverblood, she said, bowing her head respectfully. I come to offer my formal severance from the Moonshadow Pack and my oath of fealty to you. I am not a warrior, but I know court politics. I know how they think, and I am tired of being a pawn. Let me be your advisor, your voice in the den of snakes. I studied her. She had risked everything to give me Lyanna's journal. Your offer is accepted, Arya. Welcome to the Silverblood Pack. She smiled, a real fierce smile, and stepped aside. Next was Commander Thorn. He did not bow, he gave a soldier's crisp nod. The king has ordered a contingent of royal guards to escort you to your new territory and serve as the core of your garrison until you can raise your own. I have volunteered to lead them, if you will have me. This was a staggering gesture of support from the king. Thorn was his most trusted commander. I would be honored, Commander. Thank you. He nodded again, a glint of something like pride in his eyes. We leave at week's end. I will begin preparations. He turned to leave, then paused. You fought well, not like a warrior, like something new. It was good to see. Finally, as the sun broke over the mountains, painting the room in gold, the last visitor arrived. King Aldrich himself. He dismissed everyone else with a wave and sat heavily in a chair by the cold fireplace, looking every one of his centuries. You have your victory, your land, your first allies, he said, his voice rough. Now comes the hard part. Building a pack from exiles and idealists, defending a borderland territory that every hungry alpha will eye with envy, governing. I know, I said. Kaelen will be exiled, not executed. A show of your mercy. His beta, Torin, will take over the Blackwood Pack temporarily. He is ambitious, but he saw what you did. He will be cautious, for a time. He looked at me, his gaze piercing. The circlet, The moon's lament. It is a symbol of immense power. You must decide now what it symbolizes for your reign. Will it be a weapon of coercion, as some feared, or a beacon of truth? I reached up and touched the warm metal and wood. I could feel its potential to compel, to dominate, to force unity through sheer will. I also felt its deeper purpose, to reveal, to clarify, to demand authenticity. It will be a standard, I said firmly, a promise that in my territory no wolf will have to hide their true self, that leadership is not about being the strongest, but about being the most true. The king held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded, seeming satisfied. Then you understand. The road ahead is long and fraught with peril. You have won a battle in an arena. The war for the soul of our people is just beginning. He stood, moving to the door. Rest, Alpha Silverblood. Your people await you. He left, and I was alone again with the dawn. I walked back to the window. Below, the city was awakening. Smoke rose from chimneys. The world was continuing. But it was a different world than the one I had woken up in yesterday. I had a territory of rugged borderlands, a pack comprised of a guilt-ridden vassal, a disgraced royal commander, a runaway noble daughter, and whoever else would come, the rejected, the rogue, the hopeful. I had a crown that demanded truth above all else, and I had a purpose, to build something that would not just survive, but would shine as a testament to a different way. The ashes of the old dawn were settling. From them, I would have to build a new world. The challenge in the arena was over. The greater challenge, the challenge of creation, began now. Chapter 15. The First Howl. 1 week later, I stood on a wind-swept cliff at the edge of my new world. The Ashen River churned far below, a silver thread separating the lush, dense forests of the Blackwood timberlands from the rugged, beautiful wildness of my territory, the Silver Marches. Behind me, on a plateau that caught the morning sun, the foundations of a new settlement were being laid. The sounds of construction, the chop of axes, the shout of orders, the scrape of stone on stone, were a symphony of beginnings. My pack was a strange and wonderful assembly. Commander Thorne's 50 guards worked alongside burly Frostfang woodsman Elora had sent. Area Moonshadow directed the layout of the meeting hall with a sharp eye and a scroll of plans. A handful of rogue wolves, who had heard the tale of the arena and arrived cautiously at the border, were hauling timber, their movements gradually losing their defensive hunches. Even Grunt, the kennel master, had come, bringing with him a dozen loyal hounds and a knowledge of animals that was proving invaluable. The moon's lament rested on my brow, its light a soft, constant companion. I no longer hid it. It was my banner. I spent my days not in a throne room, but in the mud and the dust. I helped raise the first longhouse. I settled disputes over tent placements. I learned the names of every wolf who crossed into our territory, hearing their stories of rejection, of loss, of simple longing for a place to belong without pretense. It was exhausting, mundane, and utterly fulfilling. One evening, as the flames danced, Arya approached me, a sealed scroll in her hand, a message from the king, and other correspondence. I broke the royal seal first. King Aldrich's missive was brief. The Council of Alphas is in uproar. They demand you surrender the artifact and submit your new pack to their authority. I have told them to take their demands to the Ashen River and howl them at the rocks. Stay strong. Build quickly. The first winter will be your true test. A. I smiled. The king's support was holding, for now. The other letters were from various minor packs and individual wolves across the kingdom. Some were cautiously congratulatory, others begged for sanctuary. One from a healer in a distant territory contained detailed notes on medicinal herbs native to the marches, an unsolicited gift of knowledge. The web of quiet allies Oracle Vanya had spoken of was making itself known. We were not alone. As the moon rose, full and bright again, I felt a familiar, ancient presence. Oracle Vanya emerged from the tree line, looking as much a part of the wilderness as the ancient pines. She joined me at the cliff's edge, away from the firelight. "It begins," she said, watching the bustling settlement below. "It does," I agreed. "It's messy, and frightening, and wonderful." "The old powers will not let this stand unchallenged," she warned, but her tone was not of doom but of preparation. "They will test you, not with armies at first, but with whispers, with trade embargoes, with poisoned diplomacy. They will try to make you fail, to prove your way is naive." "I know," I said, feeling the truth of it. "Let them whisper. We will build. Let them embargo. We will learn to be self-sufficient. Let them send their poisoned words. We will answer with open hands and clear eyes." She looked at me, her ancient face serene. "You have chosen your path, not the path of the conquering queen, nor the hidden rogue, the path of the foundational Alpha. It is the hardest path of all." I looked down at the settlement, at my pack. Finn was laughing at something Thorn said, the sound free of his stutter. Maris was teaching a young Frostfang pup how to braid rope. The firelight painted their faces in warm gold. "It is the only path," I said softly, "for me." That night, when the fire burned low and a comfortable silence fell over the camp, I stood. All eyes turned to me. I walked to the highest point of the plateau, overlooking the river and the dark forest beyond. I felt the connection to every wolf below, not as a compelled bond, but as a choice, a mutual trust woven strand by strand. I tipped my head back to the moon, the lament glowing in response. I did not howl for dominance. I did not howl for vengeance. I howled for a new beginning. The sound was clean and strong, ringing with hope and promise, rolling out over the marches, across the river, into the listening night. For a moment, there was silence from the Blackwood side. Then, one by one, my pack joined in. Their voices were not uniform. Some were strong, some were rough, some were still tinged with the pain of old wounds. But together they created a harmony more beautiful than any perfectly trained chorus. It was the sound of freedom, the sound of home being forged. It was the first howl of the Silverblood Pack. Far away, in a dark castle dungeon, a broken Alpha might have heard it. In glittering palaces, worried Alphas certainly did. And in quiet hovels and on lonely roads across the kingdom, other ears perked up. Wolves who had never dared to hope heard a new song on the wind. My journey had begun with a rejection in a gilded hall. It had passed through a crucible of truth in a stone arena, and now, here on a wild cliff under the moon, it found its purpose, not in ruling an empire, but in building a haven. Not in forcing change, but in lighting a beacon. The story of Selene Silverblood, the rejected mate who became an Alpha, was no longer a tale of personal triumph. It was an invitation to all who were weary of the old cruel ways, to come and help build something new. As the last echoes of our howl faded into the starry night, I looked at my tack, my home, my future. The road would be long, the winter would be cold, the enemies would be many. But we had truth, we had each other, and we had just sung our first song into the darkness, a promise that we were here and we would not be silenced again. The end.